Tired of serving up the same old tasteless victuals to your family? Step up your grill game with new seasonings from Cloy's Southern Eats. Based off famous Southern recipes, our seasonings will add what's been missing to your family's feast. Add it to steak, chicken, shrimp, you name it. Serving up these fixings is going to make you the hero at home. So head on over to CloysSouthernEats.com and order yours today. Come get you some.
And everybody, welcome to the Tuesday, September 19th edition of the Huddle with Marty Houston. I'm your host, Jason Pattyson. Marty, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jason. How are you, sir?
I am doing excellent. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a kind of a whirlwind weekend as far as sports go. You had the Razorbacks dropping to BYU. They had a chance at the end. They had a chance, but they just weren't able to capitalize. And you saw Adam Wainwright get his 200th victory yesterday. You had a lot of NFL action, and it's starting to heat up to where it's that time of the year where, as a sports fan, you don't have to really look very far to really kind of fill that need that you got.
Oh, it's my favorite time, especially when we get into the baseball playoffs and you got that mixture of college football, NFL, and baseball playoffs all going on at the same time. Plus, basketball is just like right around the corner, and that's starting to get going. So I just love this time of the year.
Yeah, the red-white game will be on October 4th. I do believe it's 6:30, and that's free to the public. Anybody that can go to that is encouraged to go. I know that Coach Musselman's got a great squad. He's going to be putting back out there again, so everybody make sure to check that out. So, well, I'm going to tell you, Adam Wainwright got his 200th career victory yesterday in a gutsy 7-inning performance last night.
Yeah, he's what is it, 19 years that he's been with the Cardinals, or 19 years in the big leagues. And last year, I went to the last home game at Busch Stadium and saw them have the retirement. They thought, the thought was during last year that he was going to retire and that he would go out with Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina. And they did the retirement ceremony, and they'll have one for him there this year. I'm sure Pujols and Molina will both be there for that. It was a good thing to see. As we got into this year, I just and I was questioning it last year. Why did he come back? Why did he do it? And struggled so much. So, to see him get that last night, it reminded me of the Toby Keith country song. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. And he was last night. He was on it last night. 7 innings. I think he only allowed 4 hits in that one, and he had not looked like that all year. And he was even admitting it himself. It's good to feel like this again. He'd gone through like 7 straight losses and 11 games with no decision, and it was just going downhill. It started out decently and then just kept slowly, going downhill. So to see him get that just before the season ends and he officially retires was good to see him hit that milestone.
It was. Right now, he ranks 5th all-time in active wins leader. You've got Justin Verlander at number 1 at 255, and then Zach Greinke at 224, Max Scherzer 214, then Clayton Kershaw at 209. I don't know if in our lifetime we're going to see another 300-win pitcher, just by the simple fact on how quickly some of these guys get yanked out of games. It almost makes it look like the 300 is now the 200 is now the new 300.
Am I right by saying it's 19 years for Wainwright?
Yes.
Is that right? See,
18 years. 18
years. Okay. You just don't see guys going that long, pitching especially. In the big leagues. I'm looking at guys. Now here's Verlander. He's his age, and he's still going pretty strong. But I mean, I don't think he'll get to 300.
No.
I don't think he'll be around long enough to get to 300. And he's the same age as what Wainwright is. Max Scherzer, you mentioned him. He's at 200 maybe, but you're already starting to see him decline a little bit. Here in
38.
With a couple of teams this year. With the Mets and the Rangers. Yeah. So I think that kind of longevity doesn't. I don't think you're around. That's my main point is I don't think you're around long enough to do it anymore.
No, and I'm looking at this list here, and I've got to go down to number 25. Aaron Nola is the youngest in the top 25 at 30 years old, and he still only has 90 wins. And if you look at it, I mean, he may have at best maybe 8 years. I mean, I don't know if he has the Verlander stuff of going 10 years, but still at that point, you're still 165 wins behind. Or
holy cow! The pitcher
65.
Yeah, Strasburg. He's on the verge of retiring, and this guy's like 35, 34, 35, 36. Somewhere in there, and and he's about to announce. His arms had it. Again, it's just being able to pitch that long. And I'm saying this out of respect to Verlander too, because he's gone a long time, and there's been a little bit of back and forth, but he's still on top of his game. I just don't think that he'll be around long enough to hit the 300. And he's had a good long career, with the teams that he's pitched for, Detroit and Houston, and over with the Mets for a little while this year. So I just don't see him lasting like that.
I was also looking at that list on win totals for the 2023 season, and there was a name that popped up, a former Razorback that transferred to Dallas Baptist, Colin Poche. He's 12-3 on the season with the 2.10 ERA on 55 innings over 61 games.
Yeah,
he's really put a nice little season together down there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he has. I mean, as we get into the playoffs, watch for some of these former Razorbacks. I was just looking up. There's been some talk about Heston Kjerstad coming up with the Orioles. I just noticed that my television station, Fox 24, is airing a Thursday night game. We don't get a lot of Oriole games around here, but we've got the Orioles against Cleveland on Thursday night, and you're going to see Baltimore in the playoffs, and he Heston Kjerstad, but James McCann, former Razorback, also there. Houston has doggone it. Relief pitcher. I'll think of his name here in a second. that they have, but you'll see some of the some former Razorbacks getting a chance to play in the postseason.
Yeah, and that also helps tie in, what Dave Van Horn's doing with fall ball. He's able to tie that in. I know I saw him. Him and some of the players went down to Houston to go see Heston play. I saw a real nice moment where they were able to kind of meet up with each other again. And you looked at Dave and how he kind of was, approaching that whole meeting with Heston and those players. He looked like more of a proud dad more than anything else. He just kind of sat back. He gave him a hug, but he let the other guy sit there and talk to him. And you just see how proud Dave is of these guys. And whenever they really start to blossom as major leaguers, and he just enjoys it.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I was a couple of years ago, I was down on the field, and it was at one of the Razorback football games, and Kevin Kopps came out, and they were actually officially giving him the Golden Spikes Award. And you couldn't have seen a guy that was prouder with a bigger smile than what Dave Van Horn was to see him honored. And I'm sure that he's like that with all of his former players that are in the big leagues now, and he's getting a pretty good list. He's got a pretty good list of guys that are playing in the majors.
He does. So I want to kind of switch gears for just a second. Over the weekend at the Colorado State game, there was a massive hit by Henry Blackburn on Travis Hunter, and it took Travis out of the game. There's a lot of hype around Deion. There's a lot of hype around the program, how he's able to – so far he's kind of turned it around. They had a really rough game against Colorado State, went into 3 overtimes. Watched that game after I got back from the Razorback game. And whenever you hear a hit like that, reverberate across the crowd, people, give that, ooh, that sound. I really feel like sometimes here in the last couple of weeks with the hype that's been around Deion, it really kind of exacerbated the focus on the hit itself, because now this kid's got death threats he's receiving from God knows where against him, against his family. I'm not saying this is Deion's fault, but at the same time, I really feel like some of that hype kind of fed into that.
Well, it was, Colorado. Let's be honest. Colorado State doesn't get a lot of games on the national stage, and it was on there because of Deion Sanders and because Colorado and the start that they had. Colorado's picking up more airtime. I just, again, I'm going to plug my television station. We just picked up Fox.
No, plug away, man.
They picked up the game next week with USC. That's going to be a heck of a game when Colorado hosts USC in an afternoon game, and and Deion is coming out this week saying that death threats are wrong too, and that this is really a good kid. I've watched the hit. It was a late hit. There was no question he should have been flagged for it. I don't know if I'd call it dirty. It was late. He lowered his shoulder. I don't think. I guess you could have called it targeting. I don't know if he really lowered his head. What they look at for targeting rules, or tried to hit the guy in the head. But it was a late hit. He was defenseless. It should have been called. It happens on every level. It happens in the NFL too. So, but I think you're right. I mean, a little bit of attention because it was on national TV. It was with Colorado, and because of Deion Sanders coaching there.
Yeah, that's he gets penalized for it, ejected from the game. Do what you got to do as far from the refereeing standpoint, making sure that you're keeping the field of play safe. That's first and foremost. I know that people hate on the referees a lot. They don't think that they're as educated as some fans might think that they are. Some fans think that they're more educated than the referees themselves, and that's a different story for a different day, because you could probably go down a rabbit hole with that one.
Well, I mean, it should have been flagged. I mean, there's no question. And if you want to call it dirty, or in the moment kind of thing, because he came in there late, I mean, we've seen it happens on every level, and it shouldn't have happened. And I'm sure that he's going to learn from that, but I don't think I'd classify him as a dirty player, necessarily.
No, not necessarily. Because, I mean, we've seen dirty players, myself and you, for instance, during our time. I mean, we've seen guys that were dirty players. And one play does not define a kid's play. It's just something that he made a decision. It happened. Will he make that decision again? I'm going to put my money on it that he won't make that decision again. It's just, you got to just keep moving on.
Well, it was Colorado State. I think that's where some of the death threats come in. Holy cow! I was watching some of the worst, most vile stuff on Alexander Madison and the Minnesota Vikings the night after he had fumbled, and he was posting some of it on his Instagram account. Some of the stuff that people saw, and over the game, and because he fumbled one time, or because he didn't have the big 100-yard game, that Dalvin Cook had. Well, Dalvin Cook right now is not having 100-yard games with the New York Jets either. So he's got to split him some time, and I don't know. Some of it is all caught, and the way fans get caught up in it. and all of this stuff in a nutshell. I think that that goes along with it too.
If you guys have any questions, comments on anything that we're discussing, or if there's anything you want us to discuss, make sure to throw those comments on there. We'll put them on the board for you, and we'll go over those too. And so let's move over really quick to the NFL. Their first-time ballot Hall of Fame list came out today, and two names that really stuck out to me that do qualify to be nominated for the NFL Hall of Fame were Julius Peppers and Antonio Gates. Two of
you and I are thinking the same. That was the first two names that jumped out at me too.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, those are two of the finest athletes at their crafts that not only were physical specimens, but elevated their game and forced everybody to elevate their game with them.
0 Super Bowl rings for either of those guys.
Yep.
And you talk about guys that maybe helped define some of those positions and were really great, but not on really great teams. And that might make an argument for some of the other guys that are not in the Hall of Fame. But first of all, talk about both of these guys were basketball players. Julius Peppers played at North Carolina, was on a Final Four team. Actually had a double-double, 21 points and 10 rebounds in one of his games. Antonio Gates was not a football player at all. And if you
after the fact,
absolutely, if you want to talk about a guy that maybe helped Stan Heath get the head coaching job at Arkansas, it was Antonio Gates in that run that Kent State made for the Elite Eight. And he was kind of told, going into basketball, he was one of the best players on that Kent State team, but he was told, he was like, "Hey, you're a tweener. You're 6'7". You're not a guy that's gonna make it." The San Diego Chargers gave him gave him a shot at it, and he just kept developing and working it and worked his way into it. But you're right. I look at the NFL, and why do we love the NFL so much? And I just think that you're looking at the top athletes, the best of the best athletes. There's a lot of guys that get cut from teams that can run a 4.40. These guys are in supreme physical condition, the fastest, the farthest throwing, the biggest, the strongest. All of that, and they're the gladiators out there on that arena. When we go to Sundays, and I think that those two guys exemplified that. Antonio Gates is still the leading receiver for the Chargers for yards, catches, and touchdowns, I believe, all three. Julius Peppers, just a guy that dominated, from the defensive end position there, and was with a Carolina team that didn't, make it to the or win a Super Bowl. And again, it could open up the argument for other guys that were very good at their positions that didn't win. But those are the two names that jumped out at me when I saw it come out. I'm like, those guys are going to be in the first ballot here.
Yep. And a couple other names to throw out there. Wide receivers, Brandon Marshall and Jordy Nelson. Running back, Jamal Charles from the Kansas City Chiefs. And also lineman TJ Lang and Max Unger. And another name that kind of stuck, actually really the third name that stuck out to me was Haloti Ngata.
Okay.
You
might have to look. You might have to look him up. Jamal Charles was on some bad teams with the Chiefs in his years. Teams that didn't even make the playoffs. But always regarded one of the best running backs, in the NFL. So, yeah,
and it really pains me because he's a former Texas running back, but still, it's one of those. It's kind of like, okay, I really want to root for him, but he's still from Texas. God,
I know, but I just know that when you played fantasy football, some of my early years of playing fantasy football, you always wanted to pick Jamal Charles. He was a guy, even though he was on some teams that didn't do all that great. So
Speaking of fantasy football, I do want to put this out there. So last night, I was watching the Browns and the Steelers. Great game. Went down to the end. First play of the second quarter, Nick Chubb takes the ball over the left side, gets a guy that hits him in the same leg that he pretty much destroyed 7 years ago when he played for Georgia against Tennessee, destroys the same knee again. And he was my first running back I took for my fantasy league with the group I play with. And I wasn't more bummed about that. It was my first, my running back one. It was the fact that it happened to the same leg to the same guy. And I just felt so bad for him.
Yeah, you have to. He was off to a good year this year. He had over 1,500 yards last year, and was having a good game last night. He had 64 yards in the second. By the time we got to the second quarter, when this occurred, it was just so ugly. And you wonder really when something like that, and being on the same knee, really, what's his future going to be in playing again? So I was throwing this up to some of my guys today. I said, Nick Chubb was a guy that, here's some Razorback trivia because it was a pretty good game. War Memorial Stadium, Little Rock, 2014, 202 yards on 30 carries, 2 touchdowns for Chubb. Alex Collins had a couple of touchdowns in that game. Hunter Henry caught a touchdown. It was like 45-32. The final score. A lot of offense in that game, but Chubb put on a show that day.
He really did. After that injury to Tennessee, he was out for quite a while, and he was still drafted. That was one of the things that I was kind of shocked because, whenever something like that happens and you have that type of degree of an injury, people, NFL teams get really skittish. That's one of the first things that they look at, and they were willing to take a chance on him. And the team that drafted him, and it's like, wow, he'd been playing for, that was 7 years ago. At least he's been playing for 5 or 6 now, 5. And his body really has held up. And now this happens again. And now you start to kind of question, okay, when is that retirement, that little thing of retirement in the back of your head starting to kind of creep up a little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, Chubb's been around it enough. So it's just the severity makes you wonder. It just makes you question whether or not that he bounces back. And it's on again, I'm talking about medical stuff here that I probably shouldn't be talking about, but you just look at how bad it was and how many ligaments may have been torn. I haven't heard exactly what he had or what was damaged. I mean, it looked like it was broken there for me. I mean, I thought he broke his leg, but it's bad. And with it being on that same knee, you wonder, how he does bounce back. But a guy that's worked hard, he's known how to work hard and get himself into shape and work past that. He's done it before, from 2015 when he was in Georgia, turned himself into an all-pro running back. And so I wouldn't count him out.
Nope. And I'm looking on here really quick from USA Today. It said that he did have surgery today on that knee.
Okay.
They're not specifically saying exactly the nature of what was torn or broke. I know that when the 15 injury happened, he had tore his, if I'm not mistaken, PCL, LCL, and it
was a bad knee injury on the same knee, when he did that in Georgia. So yeah.
And it was dislocated on top and some cartilage damage too. So it was pretty ugly. But Marty, I want to bring this up really quick.
Okay.
Arkansas's got a really, really big task at hand coming up on Saturday night.
Yep.
Death Valley. You got Fowler, you got Herb Street that's going to be there. It's going to be loud. It's going to be electric. I just want to see how the Razorbacks can weather a possible first quarter storm and see if they can, I don't know how the game's going to go, but you have to think that LSU is going to come out and they're going to try to fire on all cylinders and put Arkansas behind the 8 ball from the beginning.
Oh yeah, and they saw Daniels last year. You know, he was the quarterback last year, and I'll say that Arkansas last year came off of the loss to Liberty. The next week played LSU, who was ranked 7th in the country at that time, and had been rolling pretty good. And came in, and Arkansas probably had their best defensive effort of the entire year. And I'll contend this: had KJ Jefferson played in that game, which he didn't. You know, they went through a couple of quarterbacks in that game. If he had played in that game and they had a little bit more offense, Arkansas, I think, could have won that game against LSU there. Yeah. So, I mean, I looked them because so much of it was mistakes that they went through. And I don't know what people want to point to this or that they ran it on 4th and short on, out of the shotgun. And I was telling the guy today, I said, that's not what got them beat. You know, you can't point to one particular thing in that game, and that's what got them beat. You know, 14 penalties for 125 yards. That's the first thing that they've got to address and taken care of. It was probably the worst game that I've seen KJ Jefferson in, of him taking care of the ball. You know, this is a guy that doesn't throw a lot of interceptions, had a critical one that led to a touchdown. He had a couple of fumbles, and one of them led to a touchdown. So, you know, you blew a 14-point lead, you blew a 10-point lead. It was bad field position. There was so many things, and it all kind of adds up to me in your first big test with a team that has replaced so many guys from last year. You know, a lot of them are transfers, portal transfers, and some of them are young guys. But you have got new guys on that offensive line. You got new guys at wide receiver, and they, especially that offensive line, it still has to come together as a unit. And I heard a former offensive lineman say this week, that he said one guy could make the whole unit look bad. And I just think that they'll circle around. I'll bet they bounce back and play. I'm not predicting a win, but because it could get ugly, if they come out and they're not focused and they haven't, put that game behind them last week, it could get ugly. You're in Baton Rouge, you're playing against LSU, who is going to be one of the top teams in the West, and this is a chance for you to maybe turn it around and turn everybody's attitude towards them. The Arkansas fans talking about in particular about them if you go out and show well.
Yeah, that's, I was talking with Drake Pretty after the game, and we were kind of looking ahead to the LSU game a little bit. And one of the things that I kind of took from how he kind of was, he already had that, okay, I think they're going to have a great showing, but this. And I was like, okay, yeah, they could do this, but this. And I think that's also one of the things that's kind of reverberating in a lot of people's minds, is that you have that, yeah, but. And we're only a quarter away through the season. They have got 9 more games to not, they got 9 games to figure it out. You've got, Nudie McLaughlin that's going back to the place where he came from. He knows what to expect whenever he walks into Death Valley. I mean, he can share some of those ways to kind of prepare yourself to go into an atmosphere like that. I know that Sam and the staff are going to try to they're going to do a great job of getting him prepared, because if you look at how the effort was shown from Kent State to BYU was exponentially better. I would say that you could also anticipate that there's going to be a lot more focus and a lot more effort. Guys, Sam's talked about it before, straining on those offensive blocks on the offensive line. I'm going to go into that in just a second, too, because I talked to Limbo Parks yesterday. And you think that with the way the trajectory is and what they're doing, it's going to show that they're going to have a closer game than some folks think. But I just got to see that proof first.
You want to see it. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on Hogville and people comment that, well, some of them there's like I don't see Arkansas winning another game. They're looking down the road. Well, you don't know how the other teams are going to be as we go down the road. I mean, we played South Carolina the second game last year and won that game. And I'm going to tell you, it was good. It was a good thing we had them in the second game because they were a much better team when you got to the end of the season. They were knocking some teams off when you got to the end of last year. They were not the same team. And when Arkansas played them early in the year, and the bounce back, the stuff with the offensive line, again, it's a good thing. We've got the luxury of having probably one of the most respected offensive line coaches in the country as your head coach. There's somebody that knows how to possibly get with them and help take care of some of this.
Yeah.
Sam Pittman is a guy that can do it. He won a national championship there at Georgia, doing that. And I'd wait and see. I mean, you've got a long road test coming up. You're at Baton Rouge. You're in Arlington, Texas. I know it's a neutral site game, but you're still on the road. You're not back in Fayetteville. Oh yeah, you got Alabama at Tuscaloosa. You're in Oxford. You're not back in Fayetteville until October 21st. So, and you just lost at home to BYU. So this is the time to see what they're made of and see how these guys, come together as a team. And sometimes those kind of tests will help in bringing a group together like this.
Yep. Make sure everybody to get on our hogville.net YouTube live channel. We'll be posting all of Sam Pittman's press conferences, also player press conferences here in just a little bit. I've got Al Walcott, Luke Has, and Trajan Jeffcoat that I'll be posting here just shortly. They were on the podium this evening after practice. So be sure to check out that. Tomorrow afternoon, Sam Pittman will have a press conference at 2:00. We'll have that on too for you. Another quick note, Saturday.
Luke Haas had a heck of a game Saturday night.
Caught his first touchdown.
Luke Haas had a heck of a game Saturday. You were talking about him, listening to him. Yeah, but he had a heck of a game. He was some clutch receiver. That's another unit that's coming around as those receivers for Arkansas, finding out who the playmakers are going to be.
Yeah, and saw Rocket Sanders taking some reps yesterday, and you don't know exactly where he stands. You would love to see him. That would be a huge boost for the offense if you could get him. I mean, even 10 snaps, augment him with AJ Green. Just a little bit of a change of pace. I think that could help a lot. But next Sunday, got a big guest coming in with Dudley and myself. We got Courtney Deifel that's going to be joining us at 4:30 on the Razorback Diamond Report with Dudley Dawson. So everybody make sure to jump in and watch that because it's going to be a great interview. She has been doing an incredible job. And like Dudley had talked about, this softball team this year is loaded from spots 1 through 9 on the lineup, and there's no holes.
Yeah. You'd like to see them get back there and make it back to that College World Series. I was hoping last year, as they were hosting the SEC tournament, that it would work out for them to win that. But she's had a lot of success and getting a lot of attention nationwide with some of the best softball players.
Yep, always. Well, Marty, I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to get you out of here too. And thank you again. And I'll see you here in a few weeks, but for sure we'll see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Everybody, thank you again. Check us out at hogville.net and also on hogville.net YouTube Live for all content. I also want to thank Coy Southern Eats, our sponsor. Going online to koisouthern.com. Also on Amazon and select stores in Central Arkansas to find all of their great products. And go rediscover the magic of Coy's Steakhouse and Southern Eats. Come get you some. For myself, Jason Pattyson and Marty Houston, thank you all and take care.